This conference will now be recorded.
We swore in everybody the first time we started. I mean, I'd be more comfortable being sworn in and have it there just in case. It's better to be sworn in, you don't need to be, than not be sworn in, you do, and we validate the whole meeting. Yeah, prescribed by the Secretary of State. Right. Well, you have, the mayor's not sworn in, you're sworn in. Well, you said you weren't sworn in, right? Right, so you weren't sworn in. Have you been sworn in? No.
I'll just sit out in the audience. I'm not a member, so. I don't know that we can have an unofficial meeting with a posted agenda. We can have a meeting without a quorum.
Give me like 5 minutes.
Okay.
Let me see if I can get some clarification.
Okay, sure.
Give me like 5 minutes.
Sure.
Just.
This conference will now be recorded.
Are you ready? Please call to order to certify the quorum.
Do I just read this part? Just call the roll? Okay. Walter Wilson,
Here.
Sean Skipworth,
Here.
Fred Linton.
Here.
Monica Newell Ledette. Brandon Noto.
Here.
And that's everybody, correct? Okay, thank you. And we have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Moving on to, I'm going to move from down to item 4 because we have somebody on the phone and we need to get this through.
Actually, sorry, sir, he had to hang up. He just got through security.
Okay, well, we'll
So-
just go without him. Okay, we'll go back to item 2, which is public comments, which I believe item 2 and item 3 are the same thing. It says this time any person with related business may speak to the board in compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. The board may not deliberate. Comments from the public should be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes per individual speaker. Is there anybody here that wants to speak?
No one signed up to
Well,
speak.
Now we'll go ahead and move on to item 4, which is consideration and possible action concerning the amended 2022 budget. Could you,
Yes.
2021, 2022 budget? Says 22 here. Oh, 21. Yeah. Do you want to?
Yeah, as I understand it, this is just a housekeeping measure to make whole the 2021 budget. This is to amend the budget to address the deficit that existed at the end of that year.
Okay, do we have an amount? Or are we just going to amend it to?
Yes. $83,080.
Okay. Anybody want to make a motion to amend the budget for the following amount?
To amend the 2021, 2022 budget in the amount of,
If I'm reading this correctly, it's $83,080.
say that again,
3,000.
$83,080.
80. Right. That is the amended amount that's added to.
Where is that information at?
It's Exhibit A.
Because what I have right here is the,
Oh, that's different.
okay, where, so it's
Did you
$88,000?
get this?
83.
Exhibit A. We may want to wait till Harrison gets on board.
On the 2021 deficit calculation document.
Exhibit A.
Is that on our screens?
No.
Oh, no, okay. I got it right, yeah.
And here's the
I'm
amendment.
going to second it so we can have a discussion.
Either. Any discussion?
Yeah, could you just kind of explain to us a little bit what these amendments are for?
That's,
Oh, you got my copy.
Yeah, here.
Yeah, these are the items that were under budgeted in the 2021 budget. So operation, you mean just?
Yeah, I'm
define
just
all of
trying,
these?
trying to figure out, so it's not that it was under budgeted, it's that more money was spent than what was budgeted. So I'm just trying to find
Right.
out
actually,
what was spent.
Right,
What, I mean, in particular, what was it that we bought?
yeah.
it it was under budget. When we did the budget, we passed the budget. Santa Fe had already passed their budget. The number that they were presented with, not all of that y'all, don't get me wrong, but not the number that they were presented with at that time was more. Glenn had already passed the budget with the item that y'all have in your budget at Santa Fe. But he said that after the first of the year, he would revisit and bring, and have the additional funding. Now, I realize he's not here, and what I'm saying is just what y'all have to take my word for it. I guess you could ask him one to. So some of the money that you're talking about was underfunded because the number that Santa Fe was supposed to budget for this was not budgeted correctly last year.
As I recall, this is what I recall him saying. So when we presented the budget, he indicated that he was gonna bring, I think it was like 40,000 or something to y'all.
I don't
can't
remember,
the
yeah,
figure,
I don't remember exactly the
He
number.
basically said that he could agree with it, but that he couldn't, but he didn't think the city could spare it in the budget at that moment. And that if he planned to come back, I think he said March or something, and bring it over. I know he's not withdrawing anymore, but.
Yeah, he did say
So
February, March.
So I don't know that it was, I guess it was a deficit on paper, but it was with the understanding that that would be why, so.
So like, the budget amendment for operational supplies, what is that? What's operational supplies?
Operational supplies. We're going through the budget right now. Can I suggest that we wait till Harrison gets back?
If he
Because
gets
my
back.
focus has been on rebuilding the budget for 2023, and we're redefining all of these terms. So how they were defined in 2021,
Let's,
Harrison can speak to that.
like I said, if he gets back. I mean, I
Well,
don't know what's gonna happen once he gets,
He said he was going to call right back.
okay.
So if we revise the budget, today for, this is $83,080 or $83,080.
Mhm.
So if we amend the budget for that today, where's that money coming out of? The general fund? The fund balance?
That's why you need Harrison, okay?
This is an accounting
This is a county deal.
housekeeping.
Yeah, I mean,
measure.
I'm pretty surprised that we're having a meeting mostly about finances and our finance person isn't here.
Well, he was on the phone. He's getting on a plane, okay? He was on the phone. He had to get on a plane. He's going through security. They won't let you be on your phone when
Did
you
he
go through
just get
security.
back
I
on?
think he's on there.
No.
What about professional service?
That's
So
our
that's
veterinarians.
an extra $30,000.
Right.
And that is because of,
Vet care. Vet care has gone up about, well, since we first formed the corporation, it's gone up about 300%.
but we sign an annual contract with them that sets their rate for a year, right?
No.
They just decide what they want to charge us every day?
That's right. That's right. They have to, yeah. The cost of veterinary
So
care
do we
is
have a- do we-
skyrocketing so quickly.
So I'll add to that too. So one of the things that had been put in the budget that we didn't fill this year, but I can say for the future budget. They put in the budget to actually just hire a full-time veterinarian because the costs were so high, and that this would not only lower those costs, but we actually might be able to recoup some money because people could come to the veterinarian and use that. That had been the plan. However, I think with I think we had trouble attracting someone, and then with hiring Ed, we didn't have the permanent director, and so that person did not get hired. So I think that, I know that we had that discussion even back then
Right.
to do that. So part of the good news, I guess, is that the veterinary salary is in the budget, but it was never paid out, so.
And the bad news is that there's a national shortage of
that's the problem,
veterinarians.
is attracting somebody.
So the veterinary service just sends us an invoice at the end of every month for what we owe? And it might be,
If
we
not
don't know
more.
we don't know what it'll be.
If not more often than that.
Well, you also have some nonprofits that actually pay some of those vet bills.
Well, we do get reduced costs.
Right, but I'm
We
just
do get
saying,
shelter. Yeah.
That a lot of that vet bill was picked up by a nonprofit last year that I don't think's paid any of it this year.
So have these, like that bill, that $29,700 for professional services, has that already been paid?
Yes.
Yes.
So it really doesn't matter how we vote on it. So what if we
That's what
vote,
I'm
what if we
saying.
vote to
This
fail
is-
this?
the-
What if this doesn't pass, this budget amendment?
Well, then if we get audited, we'll get dinged. The corporation will get dinged. This is just to satisfy an auditor.
So,
This is just
so who
housekeeping.
authorized the $29,700 to be paid for professional service outside of the budget?
I would imagine the executive director at the time when you get a bill, you pay it.
But the executive director only has the authority to spend the money that was allocated in the budget by the board of directors. So if a board of directors didn't approve a budget amendment ahead of time, then whoever signed that check didn't have the authority to sign it.
I don't have the history to know how it was handled. I wasn't here.
It sounds like there's some legal questions about some of this as well, is what I'm gathering, but.
I'm just
No, I understand. No, this is
trying to
fair
figure
question.
out what's
No,
going
No,
on.
I understand.
When is the deadline for the audit?
Daniel.
Yeah, I'm not sure, what month is it?
I mean, we've completed the audit for the past year, so they haven't done the one for the, I mean, they don't do the audit for the current falls over, so.
So is the corporation's audit done at the same time that the city of Dickinson's audit is completed?
Probably a Harrison question, I don't believe, I think it's not the same time, yeah. Since it's in the city budget, and then we realize the revenue from the other cities is a line item.
And it's done by the same auditor that the city of Dickinson
As
contracts?
far as I know, I might be wrong on that, but I think that's correct.
And that audit occurs in January?
No, we just.
It's been
we got the
going on
report
since
2 months
January.
back.
It's been going on since January.
No, the recent one, we got the report.
So if we pass this budget amendment tonight, this deficit, I'm assuming, is going to be added to the deficit that we're going to talk about in the next agenda item. That we'll all have to share the cost of paying back.
This has nothing to do with it. That's not necessarily the case. That's something we would be proposing. But if you vote for this, you're not authorizing paying any portion of that. This is strictly a housekeeping measure.
Well, I don't quite see it as just housekeeping.
No, I understand your concern. I think
$83,000 is.
No, I think it's troubling when if you've got, if you pass a budget and then you've got staff that are, if you're overspending from the budget, and I mean, it needs to be brought up sooner. I think, I would kind of say this, bothers me too. At this point, I think some of the impetus is more on like, what are we doing in the future to not have that happen anymore? And I think everybody kind of realizes that we've got to get things under control. That's kind of how I see it. But I get your frustration on that. I don't like sitting down and saying like, what, not just over budget. I know our city budget, that doesn't really happen in a lot of departments. We don't have departments in the red. So
What is contract services?
Contract services could be or includes our software provider, our copier provider.
So where did the additional $35,000 come from contract services?
Any number of places. Again, I don't know.
I'm not getting any specifics, and I'm not going to feel comfortable approving a budget amendment for $83,000 when I can't get any specifics of where that $83,000 went.
Ann?
Can you hear us? It looks like he's on the phone, but I just think it's a bad
Heard him beep
connection.
in quite a while ago.
Here, yeah. He's not muted.
well, I think that's all fair, Brandon. Do you want to, we can table it and then.
Harrison, can you hear us?
That's what I was.
We can table it.
No, see, now I muted him.
But we have a motion on the floor that we have to act upon.
No, you
Right,
can
so
table
we
it.
can table it.
You can table the motion.
Oh, now he's still muted.
Yeah, you don't have to act.
Then
Well, or postpone it, because table, we'd have to bring it back up at the same meeting, postpone it
Oh,
to
we can
another
just-
meeting.
You can bring it up in the next meeting, or you can bring it back up in this
So
meeting.
we could just
I
recess.
talked to him
we don't have to
earlier.
recess. We have other
Okay.
agenda items, but
Yeah, we can do the other agenda. I don't have to recess the meeting over that one item.
I mean, we can do that.
Okay.
I mean, we can go back to it if we get Harrison on the phone.
Yeah, if you table it, it will come up at the next, so you have to bring up the next regular meeting, or you can bring up the same one, but.
Okay. I move to table item number 4 until we can speak with our finance director.
I'll second.
Okay. You don't need to vote on the table, do you?
You do.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll table that, and then let's move on to item 5, which is a interlocal agreement with consideration and possible action of interlocal agreement with the city of the city of Hitchcock, excuse me.
Yeah, and I think that was sort of a misprint. It's an intergovernmental agreement is what we really want to discuss in the scope of services. And something I've talked to some of the city representatives with is getting a better understanding of the scope of services that they are expecting and whether or not we want to look at looking at other communities joining the corporation to create a greater economy of scale during this time of escalating costs.
So are you asking us to have or is the board looking at having you go forward with a proposal or looking at a proposal from Hitchcock to bring forward back to the city of Dickinson and the
What
board?
I'm looking for as the director is what is the vision of the board with respect to this corporation? Is it to maintain the three municipalities, or is there an openness to expanding and bringing on board other municipalities?
Well, I can tell you right now, there was an openness to expand. We were held up on expansion because of the size of the shelter at first. Then as the shelter got bigger, then COVID hit, so that held up everything. One of the things we did run into when we talked to Hitchcock originally was the area size of Hitchcock. Hitchcock is a very large area, and the question that came up was, could the shelter handle that big of an area?
Well, I
It's
want to be
huge.
clear. We're
It's a
not
huge
speaking,
area.
that's an example. We're not talking about Hitchcock specifically,
Right.
but even in that example, I think there's ways of addressing the service level that we would provide by contract.
Yeah, but while the shelter was being built before it was finished, I was approached by Bayou Vista at one of the mayor's council meeting, and they had offered, they would like to have come into our shelter. One of the things that attracts those communities like that is the fact that even though the shelter is not listed as a no-kill shelter, it's got a 95% or something like that.
99%.
99% adoption rate, which is unheard of in the state of Texas, most shelters. And a lot of the cities, that just looks good for them too, because the county shelter doesn't have that. They put the animals down at a regular rate. So anyway, that's one of the draw points to it.
So,
But like I said, one of the problems, like I said, and this is what I think we'd have to address with Hitchcock is the overall area, because obviously we can't bring in horses and all this other stuff. So
The conversation really has nothing to do with Hitchcock.
Okay.
The conversation is, do
Okay.
we want to explore?
I'm in favor of it.
commenting generally, and especially given what I think we're going to talk about on like item 6, for instance, we're talking about the budget and the cost and the money that's kind of running in the red from it. That the basic answer to that question should be, when we bring in these communities, kind of like if you're looking at annexing, are you going to gain more in revenue than you're going to rack up in cost, right? So if the answer might be a case by case basis. I mean, everybody, let me know if you don't agree. I mean, I would look around here and say, how many of us would disagree with bringing in a community if it would mean there was a net revenue gain, right, to the shelter? We'd probably want that, right, because it would lower the burden. So I think it would depend if does that community, or they kind of does it add more to the revenue than it would
Right.
remove? To me, that would be the number one question.
Two-step process and verify whether or not those communities are going to bring in the additional revenue, and then two, if there's going to be any, apprehension of coming on because it's a city department versus a 501(c)(3).
Well,
Or C3.
what's up, city? What do you mean?
I've heard there's, a debate between, it staying as a corporation or becoming a city department. Some cities would probably have apprehension to joining if it was.
I think.
Are you talking like an interlocal model? Because I guess I think what you're saying, the other way you could do this, right, is instead of having this corporation, like a city would run it, there'd be an interlocal.
Right.
Yeah.
What my sense is,
They have some apprehension if that were the chosen course.
my sense is that municipalities that would want to work with us would want skin in the game. They would want to be part of a corporation where they're part of the decision-making process.
And I've been with this since it started, and to my knowledge, there is no idea of making this no longer a corporation. Corporation has too many benefits that the city doesn't have of being a corporation. So I don't think the city's I don't even think the city's thinking about it doing that. I don't know where that came from, but I mean, the hardest part was getting this to where we are now. So
Right.
I've just heard some other cities doing that, but they're visit well with their shelters, and so I've just, wanted to make sure.
I know League City, I know League Cities' shelters is the League City shelter, but they have a large footprint from a nonprofit corporation that actually helped raise all the money, a big portion of the money for that shelter. So,
Right. And that foundation now wants to help us.
Yeah.
So,
The biggest concern that I have is a lot of complaints that I get from my constituents is that every time that they call for animal services, they're told the shelter's full. So does the shelter have capacity to even handle Hitchcock?
yeah, that is the first I've heard that complaint.
The
Complaint
shelter's
that
not full?
we have always had capacity for
You-
whatever we brought in.
Okay.
we did go through a period before Ed got here where it stayed pretty much full. Reason was because most of the animals that were adopted out during COVID were brought back. And so what animals you normally bring in the springtime, you have a large influx of cats. Okay. And then you have that about twice a year. But the dogs themselves were, they were from our shelter originally, and people, when they went back to work, they didn't want to leave them at home and stuff, so they brought it back to the shelter, and we weren't going to turn the animals down. But that we did run in that, and then we've had, but I think it's being corrected since Ed got here. We were having a problem before COVID hit. We were sending dogs all over the United States.
We have a very robust
Right.
adoption
So,
program.
I mean, we got this is going to correct itself. So
What percentage of capacity is the shelter at today?
Right now, probably 80%.
80%.
So I was going to say, I think that's a good point. I think one thing is we kind of look at, the net, like the net gain, but also the service, right? It would impact services. Maybe some of these cities, especially depending on location, maybe if there's a case where do they have a building that could be used as as additional shelter space or something. That might be something to explore if we get any partners are interested, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem in obviously in expanding it. It helps the cost share with everybody as long as it doesn't decrease the level of service that we're getting, and it doesn't put our shelter, our facilities at overcapacity or our employees at overcapacity.
Right.
Where they can't take care of all the animals. We
Right.
have to make sure that, I mean, if we bring in, just for example, if we brought in Hitchcock and, just throwing numbers out there, we get $12,000 from them, but then we have to hire somebody else or overtime or whatever, and it costs us $14,000 to make $12,000, then we're losing money.
Right. There will be costs associated with it, but it would have to be designed in such a way that.
But I think, so whenever I met with you today, it looked like you had a lot of that data that you got from the county. So I think you could probably run an analysis that would show what the cost would be to bring Hitchcock on board.
Right. And that's something else with respect to the agreement is the formula that we're using now is based on population. And I'm wondering if we want to switch it to activity, where the activities are being run.
it's going to need to be done that way. It was discussed to do it that way as the new shelter was being built. The formula that's used was strictly used for that because that was the same formula that the county used. And when we pulled away from the county, we just plugged those numbers into the formula. That's all. I mean, but it has been, it was discussed to would need to be changed because, well, first off is the size of the shelter. We went from almost nothing to, like I said, a 9,000 square foot shelter. And there's no bell, there's no bells and whistles or frivolous stuff over there. It's a shelter, period. That's what it was built to be. So, but like I said, I think it's going to have to change that way, but, and like I said, we keep referring to Hitchcock, and Ed was just using Hitchcock as a name up here. It may or may not be feasible, and I'm sure that our new director over here is going to make sure the feasibility is there before the recommendation comes. And another thing is some of these smaller communities like Bayou Vista, and like I said, their main concern was when I talked to them was to be able to have the animals at a shelter where they felt they had a better chance to being adopted than we're going to be euthanized. So,
right.
I've heard based on population, based on square, miles, size of the city, and also whether or not it's going to include livestock. Those three values, how it's going to impact. So that would need to be included in the analysis of whoever we're considering bringing on.
I believe we have a policy of no livestock.
No livestock.
I believe so.
I was going to say, Brandon, have you, I don't think we probably have as much of this as Santa Fe does maybe. Is there any one over there that ever talks about that, wanting that added as a service or anything? Okay.
Livestock?
No, never.
I mean,
okay.
Usually the biggest deal is they get out or whatever, and it's usually in the county. We don't have very many livestock in the city anyways.
Gotcha.
maybe not any at all.
We have a
but-
little bit. I didn't know if y'all had more than we did, but okay.
No, I mean,
Okay.
they get out, the fences down
Yeah.
or whatever they call the sheriff's department. The sheriff actually,
Okay.
they'll pick them up and bring them to Runge Park
Yep.
and lock them up and they come get them
Okay.
from Runge Park.
Okay.
What about wildlife?
We do fairly often see people that find distressed wildlife, but we have a wildlife rehabilitator in Santa Fe.
Okay.
And so they bring them to her. Everybody just knows to bring them to her. But I do see that quite a bit.
So if we can get that contact and we'll start referring those
Yeah,
to them. Sure. Okay.
Yeah, I can do that.
So I'm assuming that, unless there's more discussion, I'm assuming that, you know, to instruct the director to look at some of these other cities and come up with what he thinks is a good enough plan to bring to the board and let the board vote on it from there.
Okay. And also with respect to the costing formula, how do we want to even look at that?
Well, you know, before you got here, you know, I talked, it was in a conversation with Theo and with Harrison, and the costing formula was at that. As a matter of fact, last year's budget was when it was brought up that we might have to look at changing the costing formula. Okay. And I don't know, they've had more time to play with it and look at it. I don't know. It's going to be, like I said, that's something that, you know, the city manager and them usually look at. You know, we're a board, we approve this stuff, but the budget still comes from there, you know, so from the cities. So
What's that now?
we're a board and we're over the animal shelter, but the funding actually comes from the cities and from, you know, donations to the animal shelter itself. You know, the cities are the ones that actually fund the shelter. And then, like I said, then all the donations and stuff for the other part, we administer the board part of it. But I mean, as far as the actual demanding how much funding we're going to get, that's not us, or never has been us in the past. So.
I think to answer that, Ed, from my perspective, I'd say, do we want to, maybe you can show us like what that might look like in different models, like, you know, with population, with call volume, with whatever else. It'd be good to have kind of a comparison.
Sure.
I will tell you, I think intuitively, especially when we're talking about trying to control cost, it would seem like you want to, I'm going to use the word bill. That's not a perfect word, right? But you're going to basically, you would want to bill like where the activity is happening, right? You don't want to bill
service.
where it isn't happening. That's not very equitable, and it's not going to work in the long term, it would seem to me. So,
yeah,
but I'd want to see those numbers because there might be some reason that maybe it's not going to turn out that way. But,
Well, I'll tell you right now, the formula that was used by the county and never worked out anyway, because when the first 2 or 3 years before Bayou Animal Services was created, every year the county came back for additional funding. And I remember one of my comments on the very first budget was we were paying more for the animal funding than we were paying for the county, than the county was paying us for ambulance service. So, I mean, I think the formula needs to be looked at, because I don't think it's as efficient as everybody thinks it is, or it
Okay.
was.
Well, I'll do a cost analysis of what we're doing now versus what the per activity. Excuse me, I'm losing
Any
my
other
voice.
direction for the director?
Cost and resource analysis.
Okay, if there's no other direction for the director, then let's move on to item 6. Consideration possible action concerning the 2023 budget prep. Do we need Harrison for that too?
I don't think so.
Okay. Just thought of
That kind of falls under my bailiwick. With respect to the amendment that we have been discussing, that opened the door in my mind and begged the question, oh, thank you. What do we do with deficits, you know? And so I started looking at, and because of my experience in other communities and how they've addressed it, I looked at the contract. And as I understood the contract and read the contract, it appeared, and it seemed familiar to me to be a deficit-based approach based on population ratio. Because there is, as well, I sent everybody a document, and according to the interlocal agreement, each jurisdiction agreed to be financially obligated to fund the corporation through an all-inclusive annual agreement fee, which shall be the corporation's total budgeted operating expenditures. for all animal control and shelter services. And all the jurisdictions agreed to pay its pro rata share determined by population as determined by the latest U.S. Census Bureau estimate. And all the jurisdictions agreed to pay the annual agreement fee for animal control field and shelter service in monthly installments. And they all agreed that the per capita costs for each year shall be determined by the corporation and approved by the governing body. So I went back and I looked at the most current census that I could find, which was 2020. And the population of Dickinson is 20,846. Santa Fe is 12,735. And Clear Lake Shores is 1,062. That's a total population of 33,743. So City of Dickinson's population represents 60% of that population. Santa Fe is 37% and Clear Lake Shores is 3%. So with a deficit of $239,000, that would be divvied up. $143,000 to the City of Dickinson, $88,000 from the City of Santa Fe, and $7,000 roughly from the City of Clear Lake Shores. We had a pre-meeting meeting, if you will, yesterday with Clear Lake Shores and a representative of Santa Fe, and they didn't want to have to go to their city council twice because hearing about the 2021 deficit begged the question, is there going to be one in 2022? So they asked me to put together some information so that we could roll 21 and 22 together. And that's the next document that I sent out, which is background information. And before I got into it, I wanted to explain why these costs have escalated the way they have. And as we discussed earlier, the actual veterinary costs have increased over 300% since 2019, just to last year. This year, we seem to have gotten them a little bit under control, and we're actually under budget so far for 22. Salaries and wages, and this is just salaries. This is not all your HR costs. This is not FICA, and it's not overtime, and it's not benefits or anything. This is strictly your hourly or salary. Went from 176,000 to 339,000 over the last several years, about 92%. And but keep in mind, back in 2019 and 18, we were operating out of a shed. We were using temp services to clean the shelters. We did not have a professional staff caring for the animals the way we do now. And then building and maintenance, of course, with a new building and that, you can see that has been a bit of a roller coaster, and it's been all over the chart. But despite all of these escalating, and you can go in, the amendment that you looked at, and you can see those escalating costs in all of those different categories. The fee that the municipalities has paid since going back to my knowledge, 2018, and I'll go back to even further, has been flat. There's been no increase in the amount the municipalities have paid. So having said that, we're looking at projecting our 2022 budget to the end of the year. We're looking at about a $324,000 projected deficit, which if you roll the two together would be an estimate of $563,000 deficit. In the City of Dickinson's 60% share would be $337,800. Santa Fe's 37% share would be $208,310. Clear Lake Shores would be $16,890,000. So, which is why I was asking, do we want to continue to use the ratio, which I think we're pretty much committed to it for the last couple of years, and why we might want to explore other alternatives going forward. But the cities had asked for this information, and I wanted to provide it because we're preparing our budget for 2023. And What we're wanting to do in 2023 is make sure that we have a budget that is fully loaded at the time of approval so that we're not coming back with another deficit at the end of 2023. This is catch up.
Just to kind of clarify, so are you proposing at this point that you'd like to do that, like that use cost analysis to look at the actual call volume, use, things like that, and then come back to us with what that would look like?
For going forward.
Yes, for like this upcoming budget year?
For going forward, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Including the upcoming budget year?
Yes.
Just to be clear. Okay.
Right. I don't know that we could apply that
So there's really no,
to this deficit. No, there's no action. This is
Right.
conversation, but yes, what we are going to be asking the municipalities is to build this figure in, and I believe we're open to looking at different scenarios. Something I think Clear Lake suggested was, or maybe it was Santa Fe, was stretching it over 2 years instead of 1 year, paying back this deficit. So we're open to different suggestions for recouping this.
Okay. Because I know, and you noted here that there was some built-in deficit. I know part of that was because, frankly, I know the accounting was a mess, and Harrison has gotten here and has kind of cleaned up a lot of the accounting to where at that point, you weren't here yet at all. Theo had been here like a month,
Right.
and they were basically trying to figure out like what's actually going on over there,
Right.
to get it under control. So I know part of the reason that deficit was in there was because we actually didn't think it would be as high as it was, and it wasn't. I know it was smaller than what was projected. Are you going to, I assume this year are we proposing a built-in deficit this year? I would hope not.
No, I'm
Okay.
building a balanced budget.
I mean, okay.
Based on, right now, I'm using the formula that is in the agreement.
I mean, even I remember that, and I'm a little squeamish about that, but anyway, I just wanted to be clear that we're not doing that any longer. Okay.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
it was surprising to see a built-in deficit in the approved budget.
I'll put it this way, what would you owe like the deficit to, like primarily?
The same kinds of costs that are in this amendment. Escalating veterinary costs, escalating staff costs, benefits, operational costs.
Because my understanding had always been that the veterinary costs tend to be the biggest overrun. Was what I've been told in the past. Is that true?
Yes. As you can see, we're running under budget now because we're trying to get a handle on it.
I mentioned earlier that I'm in-house veterinarian, and I think that's the primary reason that deficit is lower, because that position was not actually filled. So you take that salary out. Would that be something, in your opinion, and I'd like to see some data on this, of course, but that could like lower costs further? Would there be probably net savings on that, or?
If we were to maximize the use of a veterinarian by providing services to the public, absolutely.
Okay.
And we could do that for all 3 communities by having vaccination clinics and spay neuter clinics, and different days of the week in the different communities.
Because I feel like that being one of the biggest areas, that would be a very important step to getting the costs under control, is to get that person in place. And I know the labor market is what it is, but I mean, we just got to kind of fight through that. It might be worth some money on the front end in terms of a search. Maybe we have to offer a little more than whatever the salary would be. But if it gets somebody in there and it's saving us money and letting us monetize some services, I mean, to me, I don't know how others feel about that. I feel like it's probably worth exploring. But.
Well, my first question about that would be is how many hours of veterinary care are we providing right now a week?
We have a veterinarian that is available to us on call. It's constantly available.
So on average, in a week, how many hours is that vet working for us?
We only secured this veterinarian about 2 weeks ago. a week or two ago.
Okay.
So we're still doing a cost analysis on whether or not this is going to work. But
Well, here's
the
what
level
I'm
of
getting at.
services, the level of services is far superior to anything we've had in the past.
Right. What I'm getting at though is the same thing, just like we talked about with adding other municipalities. We say that we could offset the cost by allowing the public to use them, but if it's 40 hours worth of work, then it's 40 hours worth of work. You know what I mean? That's what I don't know. How many hours a week?
Well, it would be an exempt position, but yeah,
Well, you're not
but it would have to be well managed.
We're working to death.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, if it's going to be an exempt position, then it's going to have to be what they could make in private practice, or you're going to have to guarantee them that it's only going to be 35 or 40 hours a week.
Yeah,
Because they're not going to come work
You
for
do have
us
to
for
put together,
150 if they can go make 250 in the private sector
which they can do easily.
easily.
And then also, I think you ought to consider having an in-house vet versus volunteer time from some of the local vets, because I know a lot of the local vets do that. And also the Animal Alliance has several veterinarians on staff.
Well, I'm talking to the Animal Alliance right now, and no vet is going to work for free or volunteer.
Oh, that's gone. No, that's gone. It's been gone for about a year or
But they
two.
do work at a reduced
Yeah.
rate. But even the reduced rate, I've been working with shelter vets for 30 years, and our local vets, even at a reduced rate, is higher than anything I've ever seen.
But the Animal Alliance would be the third consideration, because I know that they help local.
They're exploring. They're not sure they can take us on yet, but they're exploring it.
Another thing that really is going to have to start, we're going to have to, it needs to, need to pick up on getting more donations. The donations that were coming in prior to you getting here were, as a matter of fact, there was more that would have more than adequately paid for a veterinarian. But I think almost all of that dried up this year.
That kind of segues into number 7 on the agenda. Do you want to move into that? Or is there any further discussion on?
Oh, yeah, I got some other things. So is I'm sorry, I forgot his name. The treasurer, is he with us?
No.
And how long has Harrison?
Harrison, can you
been
hear
the
us?
treasurer of the board?
I don't get how.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So if you want to talk to him, have your mic on.
Okay. Harrison, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. This is Brandon Noto. I'm with Santa Fe.
Hi, Brandon.
So I guess just going through this budget prep worksheet, have you had an opportunity to review it?
The budget prep. Yeah, let me flip to the sheet.
It says budget
That's the
item
Yeah,
6.
yeah, I did look it over.
So
That's item 6, correct?
Yes. So the first question that I have is, so in 2019, we budgeted $5,000 for veterinary services. The actual was $31,000. So we come back in 2020 and only budget $7,500.
Yeah, that I don't know how or why that was budgeted. I started in March of 2021.
Oh.
And that's when we started trying to
I can tell you how it was.
look at that better.
Okay.
I can answer for you, Harrison. Animal Alliance was one of the groups that was picking up a lot of veterinary service.
So it was free.
It was.
That's right.
It was Animal Alliance itself. Yeah.
Doing all of our vet care for free.
Right. And then something happened. They decided not to do anymore. And so that's what the cost went up.
Right.
But that's what I was saying. One of the problems is other, excuse me, the other nonprofits that we need to just search out more. There's plenty of money out there, or grants and stuff. And they were paying for a lot of this, and then during COVID and other things, they just dried up.
Do you have any idea why the Alliance stopped doing that?
I do not know exactly why.
All right. And then on for the proposed budget. So this is the one that I have at the top. It says 2022. Is that the latest proposed budget that we have?
Yes.
Okay. So in 2020, 2021, our proposed budget was $127,000. That was revised.
Okay, now what, are we still on item number 6?
No, we're item 4.
Yes, we still are on item number 6, and I'm looking at the proposed budget for this year. So under salary and benefits, it was 127,000 in 2021, and then the proposed budget for this year was 451. So that's like an extra 320,000, and then
Yeah.
there's an additional a revised additional for 324,500. So that combined together is almost $800,000. So we're going from 127,000 last year to nearly 800,000 this year. What is the additional 800,000?
Okay, I don't have that sheet in front of me, but I think the total expenditures budgeted for FY22 was 800 and some thousand dollars, not just salaries and benefits.
That's what it's showing here. It's saying that the total expenditures would be 856,000 plus 214,000, so it'd be a little over a million. Unless I'm interpreting this proposed budget wrong. But so the second to last column says proposed fiscal year 21-22. And then the very last column says budget fiscal year 22 to revised fiscal year 21 increased decreased. So that last column would be then in addition to, correct?
No, the last column is the proposed FY22, which became the adopted FY22. I think I know the sheet you're looking at, where I think the sheet you're looking at, did it start with like FY19 and then start going across and ending with proposed FY22?
Yes.
And then the very last column is the differences.
Okay.
It's the differences. The very last column is the differences between the FY22 and the revised FY21.
I understand. Okay, so then salary and benefits is increasing by $324,000 from 2020.
Yes. Basically, that was the result of prior to FY22, Bayou Animal Services had very few full-time people, a lot of part-time people, volunteers, and temp agencies. And so when we looked at FY22, we wanted to make it a full operations. So it was looked at how much staff would be needed for full-time, to staff it full-time so you didn't have to rely on part-time. There's a lot of hit and miss with that, and as well as to eliminate the staffing agencies. I think if you go down and look at contracted services, you'll see a big difference between FY21 and FY22 because most of that was the staffing agency.
Yeah, $70,000 difference.
Yeah, because a lot of money was going to staffing.
So
FY22 began the first year of recognizing it as a department or an organization with mostly full-time people, and that's what it is now. They're full-time people. They're not part-time people, and no temp agencies.
Okay, so we saved $70,000 by spending $324,000.
That's correct. To get it to a full-time operation, to be able to do the things that they needed it to do, I guess.
Expect.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but I think in that case, it's not like you're not paying more money for part-time people. You're paying for you're getting a totally different product for it.
Sure.
That's why.
Yeah. No. Sure. I understand. So then, when did fiscal year 22 start?
October 1st of 2021.
Okay.
And it goes through September 30th, 2022.
Okay. So then in September, I believe y'all adopted a budget, or I'm being told we did. I haven't seen a set of minutes yet saying that it was
Yeah.
adopted, but I'm being told that it was adopted in September of 21. So,
Yes, it was like, I think it was September 21st. And then that was adopted by the board. And then I think September 28th, council approved the Bayou Animal Services FY22 adopted, as well as there was a revision to the 21 at that same time on September 21st. That's why that's that last column right before the FY22. That was adopted at that same meeting and also approved by the City of Dickinson Council at, I think it was the September 28th, 2021 meeting.
okay. And so this is the budget that we will operate under.
Yeah, the 2022 is the budget right now in the year, the current fiscal year.
Okay, until August, yeah. Okay.
September.
That's all the questions I have for right now.
While we have
Okay, thank you.
Do we want to go back to number
Yes.
4?
Harrison?
Yes.
Harrison? Yeah, we're going to go back to item 4, which was a budget amendment. You weren't here to answer questions. There's some questions on that.
Perfect.
For the amending the budget. So it says down here that the total deficit for this would have been for the 2021 budget was $239,000. But what I'm seeing on this is that it was 130. So I'm trying to figure out where the $239,000.
Okay, where are you seeing the 130?
So back to the budget that we were looking at just a minute ago, on the second page under fiscal year 2021 projected, it has a deficit of $130,659.
That I don't have that sheet in front of me. I just have the Exhibit A for the item number 4.
Okay.
The budget amendment is for $83,000.
The budget amendment, no, I'm talking about the deficit, the 200, this page right here that Ed gave us.
I know, but the item is about the deficit, to amend the budget for the deficit, which was 83,000 something, 8380, I think. Is that right?
This is the one that he's referring to.
Okay.
That's
That he's
item
talking
4.
about. Gotcha. Okay, so there was operational supplies ended up being $20,200 over budget. What is included in that?
Operational supplies would be supplies that aren't office supplies or like building or cleaning or kitchen supplies. There would be supplies for the kennel operations and animal control in that nature. They all get coded under operational supplies.
So the total budget was $42,000, and then they spent an extra $20,000. So they spent 150% of their budget. What would cause that much more to have to be spent in addition to?
That I could just theorize that if you had, if you budgeted based on a certain number of care provided there at the shelter, like if you had a different, if you had an assumption on what your capacity would be for that budget, and if it was over that, then it would take more operational supplies. If capacities were higher, during the COVID time, it was kind of, I guess, hard to exactly pinpoint what it might be. Would it be less than normal, more than normal? And I think we found out that a lot of it was a lot higher than normal when it came to the services provided there at the shelter, with the increase in the number of cats and dogs and things like that, as far as I understand.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that, with inflation and the cost of things are going to go up. And I think, maybe you expect a 5, 10, maybe a 15% deviation from that. But when you have a 50% deviation, I think that's cause for some concern. What about the professional service? So that was budgeted at 95,000. Now they're asking for another almost, or I guess already spent another almost $30,000. What do we get with our professional service? What does that entail?
That is mostly, it's purely it says professional services, but it should say veterinarian services, because that's mostly what it is. If you like, I think the Baylor Animal Clinic and a lot of the other vet services providers are under that code.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of that just may have been inefficiencies in the vendors that were used at that time. Since that time, we used vendors that we end up setting accounts up with. Some of it was, I could see if there was an emergency and it went somewhere that wasn't a vendor already set up in the system. But there was a lot of those, and now basically all the vendors, starting in 22 for veterinary services, they all are vendors with terms. So it's a lot easier to manage what's going on in that activity and in that line item. That's why I think you can see on Ed's item number 6, where we had projected 150,000, and it's actually going to come in projected less this year for FY22.
Right.
So I just think it's a better management of it.
Gotcha. Yeah, because to have a cost increase of 302%,
Exactly.
So, that's a lot.
And a little bit, I think that also goes along with President Wilson's statement that before there was more donation money involved in that,
volunteers,
and a lot of that dried up.
Gotcha. And then the contract services. So that was originally budgeted for 77,000. Now they're asking for an extra 35,300. What's involved in that?
There's very little that in that line item that is non-temporary services. That's why you see like an FY22 for the adopted amount for that was like $7,000. Because that was the part that was non-temporary services. The biggest driver in that line item was the temporary services. And, they were very inadequately staffed in 21, and, they had some part-timers and part-timers leave. They had some volunteers. They didn't have a lot of full-timers. So there's a lot of probably inefficiencies there with temporary services. And that's one of the reasons why we look to go to a more full-fledged part-time in the earlier discussion.
Mm-hmm. So, but that's an increase of cost. That's an $35,300 increase in cost for our temp workers. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. There may have been a little bit additional increase in cost in other contracted, but, if you just look at that change in what the $77,000 original 21 budget, and then the $7,000 22 budget, 90% of that was temp services.
But then our salary and benefits is increasing because we did away with the temp services and hired more part-time. So how did the contract services increase if we decreased the use of temp service?
How did the temp services increase?
Right, because we said earlier that that's the reason why our salary and benefits line item increased by 320.
Yeah, for FY22.
Right.
this was like I said, I think with the inefficiencies in the labor force there in 21.
Prior to fiscal year 22.
Yeah.
Okay. So all of these expenditures that were above the budget, those have all been paid?
Yes. Every one of those have been paid.
Okay. Who authorized those to be paid?
They would have been the Bayou Animal Services director at the time.
So the director is authorized to spend money outside of the budget approved by the board of directors?
Well, I guess technically the answer is no. But, during the time frame, when we met at September 21st, like 2021, that may have been the first meeting of the board in maybe almost a year. And that's the last meeting since tonight. So I think that, yes, they signed off on it, and a lot of these were, the service was already completed. That's one of the reasons, like with professional services, we went to setting up the vendor in the system. So, under our purchasing policy is if it's if it's going to be over $3,000, it has to be a requisition. So therefore, a lot of the money doesn't get spent before it actually gets invoiced. And a lot of these items were services already rendered by the time finance gets the approved invoice to be paid.
Am I not reasonable in being alarmed at that money was spent without approval of the board outside of the budget?
No, I definitely think there is reason for concern because, like I said, I think there was some inefficiencies there. There was probably lack of communication. There was, just lack of regular meetings, and that's why in FY22 we enforced policies like with the setting up the vendors. And, I think you'll see actually us coming in under budget in expenditures in FY22 because of that. And, there was turnover in board members from the cities that they were a board member, then they're not even with the city. So I think there were some issues there, and then just a lack of communication to rebuild the board and get the board back together. So these things can be talked about, and you could do like a mid-year amendment or amendments as they come up that are significant. But we're here now in 22 and going through the audit process at FY21, and with the expenditures being over, the budget expenditures being over the actual. It would just be better to do the budget amendment to get it to the actual, so there's not an audit comment on that. But you are correct.
I'll add. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'll just add to that. It is disturbing, and I'd say I'm not going to say too much here in a setting outside of an executive session or something, but there have been personnel changes.
Right.
Some over here now, and that's pretty much all I'll say. But it is. I mean.
Right. So the ultimate question that I have is then, Edward, brings us this $563,000 deficit that he wants to clean up, and I'm a balanced budget kind of guy, so I appreciate that. But he's telling me that I'm going to have to go before my taxpayers and ask for $208,000 that was spent. That 83,000 of that was spent without approval of the board.
Well, I actually have a question with respect to that.
Okay.
I've heard multiple times that 2022 is supposed to come in under budget. So why is there a deficit for 2022?
There's a deficit for 2021.
I know, but this conversation started with an additional.
Oh, there is a projected almost $100,000 deficit.
Exactly. Yeah. So how is there a deficit if we're coming in under budget?
sure where you heard that we're coming in under budget.
He just
The
said
question was, how is there a deficit?
it. He just said it a couple times in this conversation.
There was a couple areas where you talked about, I don't know if you meant line items were coming in under budget. Is that what you meant? Not the budget as a whole? You mentioned a few times that we were currently under budget. I think Ed did said that as well earlier.
Harrison?
I think you're talking about like veterinary cost or something. I
Yeah.
think it was line items. I
If
don't
it's,
think it was.
yeah, if it's referring to the document that Harrison put together, it's just for those line items. Right, Harrison?
Or like, speaking of the Exhibit A, those specific line items?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just those specific line items.
So, are you expecting us to approve this, or what type of action are you wanting out of us?
Yeah, my recommendation was to approve the amendment, because this is for the budget itself, not the actual discussion that was part of Exhibit A, but just to bring the budgeted amount in line for the audit process.
So let me ask you a question, Harrison. Let's say that this board here in a few minutes takes a vote on this amendment, and let's say it fails, and that the board decides that we don't want to pay out that money. What happens?
Well, I think that's two different questions. If it fails, then the budget would be the budget, and at audit time they'll look at budget to actuals, and there'll be an audit comment that Bayou Animal Services was over budget by this amount. Depending on their gauge, would it be material or would it just be a comment? That's if it fails.
Because that money's already been spent.
And now the other part of that question was if they did not pay it. Those items were already paid by the city of Dickinson. So
how does the city of Dickinson have authority to spend Bayou Animal Services Corporation funds?
What was the question again?
How does the city of Dickinson have the authority to spend Bayou Animal Services Corporation funds?
I mean, it was the finance processes the payments. So it was paid by the city of Dickinson, as in the finance department.
That's
not like the city of Dickinson, like our operating account.
So all the money
it would have come out of the Fund 42.
So it goes into the account. It sits in the fund, the money that Clear Lake Shores gives, Santa Fe gives, that we give, but it's all in our finance department. It's all housed there. It's all processed there. I think it goes back to the real issue. I think goes back to what you said earlier, that yeah, there were some staff issues with they weren't being they weren't managing the finances, they were overspending. I mean, that's the bottom line.
So our money, and I see that on here too, our money's kept in a Fund 42. So is that an account that is part of the city of Dickinson's assets?
No, Fund 42 in our accounting system is Bayou Animal Services. It's not a fund like if you think of the audit report, like of a city of Dickinson fund. It's just in our accounting system. Fund 42 is Bayou Animal Services. So any monies, any expenditures go through Fund 42. That's how it gets accounted for.
Okay. And if a check gets issued out of that account, how many signers have to be on that check?
Right now, the checks that get issued out of the city of Dickinson, the signers on the checks are the mayor and the mayor pro tem.
But that's not city of Dickinson money. That's Bayou Animal Services Corporation money.
That is correct. But all the accounts are under one, like, financial services agreement. So, I mean, that's the way it was originally set up. It was never changed to, it would be Bayou Animal Services, like board president and someone else signature. That's also the way, like, the Dickinson Management District functions as well.
Okay.
So, I mean, if that was what was one of the things that would be desired and need, then that's pretty easy. We would just need to know who the signers would be and get them added to the Texas First process.
Harrison, are you saying that that's set up by an interlocal, that arrangement that the finance department?
What's that?
Harrison, are you saying that the finance department of the city, basically by interlocal with the corporation, is executing the expenditures?
Exactly.
Okay.
It's part of the agreement is to, like, reprocess the payments. We code it into the system.
Does the city of Dickinson bill the corporation for services provided by city staff on behalf of the corporation?
I believe that our agreement with them, it does not.
Okay.
Some of the other agreements we have, we do.
Some of the other agreements with other entities?
Exactly.
Okay.
Because we also, we have the Economic Development Corporation, we have the Management District, we have other true city of Dickinson entities. And those do have service agreements where we do get reimbursed for services. But we do, if you look in there is no line item there in that budget sheet that had the FY20, FY21, FY22. There is no line item there for professional services for us.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Sorry about that. Wow.
That's okay.
Brandon, I have a suggestion to everybody about this too. Would you be more comfortable if we didn't vote on this tonight? Maybe gather some extra information, let you go back and talk to your folks.
Well, I mean, that's probably what we're going to probably was going to get to anyways, but
Okay.
I'll tell you, just generally speaking, I have a lot of concerns about how this corporation is ran, because the line between the city of Dickinson and the corporation blurs a lot. Look at the agenda that we're all looking at. Look at the seal at the top of the agenda. That's the seal of the city of Dickinson. We're not the city of Dickinson. And I mean, there's a bunch of examples that I could go through, but I'm just trying to figure out, is this a department of the city of Dickinson or is this a separate and independent corporation?
I agree with you. I think it's messy. The way it's been done is messy.
Yeah.
Part of me does think that it might be cleaner to use an interlocal system instead of this, because I think that we do, because these do come. And I do want to say, I hope you don't interpret any of that. None of that's to like is an insult against any other things or anything.
No, I understand. It was keeping the thing going. And
so I don't want you to take it that way, please. But I do. I mean, that's kind of share your. Well, actually, I do share your concern to some degree. That I think maybe it is a messy arrangement, and we're seeing a little bit of that here. And what I really want to stress is that a lot of the reason Ed is here and a lot of the reason that we're having these meetings and that we've had Harrison go over the finances is to address the stuff that you talked about, that is to not have those kind of practices going on, and that there have been some problems, and you're 100% right. And
yeah.
Harrison is your finance director.
Correct.
So and that's a problem if we're going to stay this way. I mean, I can go through the bylaws, and I mean, we can talk about that. We can do that at a workshop if we want to later on. But what I will tell you is that I have a problem with the fact that there's no minutes. There's no minutes, none for this corporation. I asked to see the last 12 months of transactions. I didn't receive that today. So I don't know what we're spending our money on, what we're not spending our money on. And I'm getting a bunch of I don't knows. That was the last guy. I will not be able to go back and advocate for the city of Santa Fe to spend $88,000 or $208,000 for funds that were paid just because they were paid without the direction of the board. Just because the mayor and the city manager or the finance director approved those funds, if it wasn't approved by the board, I don't see how I can expect the taxpayers of Santa Fe to pay for that.
Well, I'm going to say it wasn't, I didn't approve those funds.
Yeah,
They didn't
I
approve
don't
those
know how it
funds.
works. Yeah, and I'm not trying to lay blame anywhere. I mean, that's not the
I
point
mean,
of
yeah, I think at
this.
the end of the day, I think what everybody wants is, this provides a service everybody needs. We're doing this way for a reason. We could do it other ways, but we choose not to. We just need to find a way to do it to where it's equitable and the finances work and that everything's being done above board. And I think that's what everybody wants. So, I mean, I don't want you to interpret me if I had any problem with anything you're bringing up. I share a lot of these concerns. And since we do house a lot of the facilities, there is a lot that goes on, a lot of discussions that go on about it here and that's just kind of why. I think the city Dickinson's maybe a little more in tune to it, but that doesn't mean it should be that way. And whatever arrangement we use going forward, we want to make sure everybody is included as part of it. So I agree with you. I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying.
So I talked to Edward and he didn't know about it. And so I'll ask the board, does anybody know where the minutes are for the corporation? Nobody knows. Okay.
I had a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, that's extremely alarming because that's like federal laws, state laws.
In 2020 and 2021, a lot of the meetings were canceled due to COVID. And I believe there was one meeting that did happen, and those were the minutes that we were looking for, but we have not been able to locate them.
Yeah, and I mean, and the bylaws say that we're supposed to have our annual meeting is in April when we elect our president and vice president and all the other officers and do a couple of other items. So, I mean, are we planning on doing that? Because this isn't the annual meeting, I'm assuming. So
I think that gets back to we're trying to get on track.
Yeah. And actually, when we were going to get to a future agenda, I was going to suggest that we have our annual meeting next month where we do that.
Yeah, I would definitely like to have a workshop where we can just sit down and kind of hash some of this out and figure out where we want to go, especially before we open it up to other entities. We need to get our house in order. So,
no, I think that's a good thought. Yeah,
that would be my request. But
do you want to coordinate that outside the meeting?
You're looking
a workshop? Yeah,
Oh yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, we can leave that up to the executive director to find a meeting date. But I would like it to be an opportunity where we can take some time where we don't feel like we're being rushed or that we're inconveniencing any of the other board members.
Sure.
We understand that it's going to be a meeting to kind of hash all this out. And I would like to see it between now and then, if we can get a copy of the minutes. I would like to see at least the previous audit, if not the previous two audits, and a financial report of our money or transactions, money coming in, money going out.
So the audit should be, I believe it should be part of the city audit. So we can, I'm sure we can get Harrison to parse that part out for you. And probably with the financial transactions as well. He'll have to go back and do that.
What I see is I see a lot of I can't think of the right word, but like the city of Dickinson secretary is also the secretary of the board. The finance manager is also the finance of the corporation. The auditor of the city. There's not a lot of separation there. Not trying to accuse anybody of doing anything wrong, but when you look at it, it doesn't look like it's above board.
Well, I think there's a lot of, I don't think there's nothing like improper right about that. You can have those arrangements. The auditors are independent auditors. So it's the same. If the auditor isn't independent enough to do your city's audit, they're not independent enough to do this audit. So, I mean, it's an independent auditor one way or the other. But I do agree there's a lot of entanglement with it. And I think some of that's like historical. And we just want to figure out a way to make it work for everybody. So,
yeah. Yeah, because I mean, passing these deficits, I mean, this is just crazy, and I mean, some of us might have been on the board, some of us might not, but how do you sit down with an executive director and a finance director and a board and you agree to approve almost a $500,000 deficit? I mean, that just blows my mind. how you could do that. And that's what we did in 21, 22. $432,147 deficit that was passed. That's why we're in the position we're in, I suppose. But if we don't do something, we had our fund balance in 1920 was 761,000, and it's fixing to be 198, less than 100,000 that we're going to have in our fund as a fund balance. We're fixing to be bankrupt.
Yeah, I mean, so there's
We're
been a lot.
fixing to be bankrupt.
Yeah, so that's kind of, again, that's why Ed's here. That's why I'm trying to get fundraising up, trying to control the cost. Yeah. No, you're exactly right.
So I'm assuming that we're just going to leave item 4 on the table still next time we meet. And,
if I could just speak very quickly to the benefit, some of the benefits, I certainly understand the concern. But as we had discussed earlier too, some of the benefits with respect to the current arrangement is that by the corporation gets the support of an IT department, of an HR department, of an entire finance team at no cost.
But it is at cost, because if that means that then the city of Dickinson is allowed to approve our money without the board approving it, or allowed to set our fees, like I looked at the fee schedule that he said was just adopted by city of Dickinson. Well, how does the city of Dickinson have the authority to adopt the fees that the corporation's going to charge? I don't understand that. Or you look at our bylaws and it says that our bylaws have to be approved by us and then approved by the city of Dickinson.
And I think part of the issue is that we're, as you alluded to earlier, we've been kind of in two worlds a little bit here, right? We're sort of operating as if it's in a local agreement, but it's not. And that's been, yeah.
So, I mean, it appears like it might as well be an interlocal, because the city of Dickinson's doing whatever they want with it and then telling us, hey, we spent more than we thought. Here's the bill.
Well, and I would say, kind of in defense of the city to some extent, that when you go back over the corporation over the years, I mean, all the communities had board members at the meetings. The board members showed up, including Santa Fe. They approved the budget.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's not the city. It's not as if the city of Dickinson is unilaterally deciding, but I mean, their budgets have been approved, practices have engaged this way.
But the way that the board is set up is all the other cities could vote against it, and every person from Dickinson vote for it. It passes.
And I think the reason and again, that would go back to how it was set up originally. So everybody agreed to that when it was set up, first off. And then I think the other issue is that a lot of that's based on like the population and the skin in the game. When you look at the budget, the city of Dickinson spends the majority of the budget that goes into it. And I think that's why it's set up that way. But I mean, again, I go back to everyone agreed to these things when it was started. Now, did Sean Skipworth do it? No. Did Brandon Noto do it? No. But that's how it was set up. So to some degree, we are it's a legacy of how it was set up.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean we have to continue to do it that way necessarily, to your point as well. So. So when we do it, here's how I'll give you my understanding of it, is that what goes on is that so when you go back to Clear Lake Shores, y'all vote, and same with Santa Fe, y'all vote and say, okay, here's the money we're sending to Bayou Animal Service this year. Right. So you vote. It is in our budget because we pay so much of it, right? Because the facility is managed by the corporation, but the city is kind of I don't know the word for it, but
the landlord,
basically. Yeah. So we're doing all that. So that's why it's passed.
The shelter.
Yeah. So that's why it's passed as part of our budget.
Shelter belongs to the city.
Right.
Why is that?
What you have, pardon me?
Why is that?
Because you're the ones that built the shelter.
That's how they did it back then.
Y'all had, when it came to the shelter, no city contributed to the shelter but the city of Dickinson. And what it was with the city of Dickinson, and you were here when it started. The city of Dickinson started this. It's their shelter. It's on their property. And the corporation was formed for the benefits of having a nonprofit, because there's so many more avenues for a nonprofit to get money to go ahead and help offset the cost of the shelter. Now, the shelter is administered by the city. It has been for everything else. Y'all have an agreement with us, which I believe has an out in it.
The shelter is administered by the city?
Well, the staff over there are all city employees.
Oh, they are?
Yes.
Well, then why are we paying their salary? Because the city should be paying it then if they're city employees.
Well, in each city, Each city is paying their portion to run the shelter. Okay?
So the shelter employees over there are City of Dickinson employees.
Yes, they pay their benefits, they pay, the stuff like that.
So then what are we paying $324,000 for in salary, the corporation?
It's the cost of cost of run the shelter.
Because I think it's an interlocal
It's interlocal,
that it's
yes.
set up to where y'all pay, but then the city administers.
Oh, the
deal.
city
Interlocal.
administers the money.
Correct.
It's
So they
interlocal.
are our employees
So their
because
paycheck comes from the City of Dickinson.
Right.
correct, but that is funded in part with all the money that everybody pays. So the money Santa Fe pays, Clear Lake
And the
Shore.
reason-
We funnel the money through the City of Dickinson.
Pretty much.
And the
Again,
reason-
it gets into is it really an interlocal or is it
It's not.
a corporation, right?
It's not.
Well, no, I mean I think it is
Yeah.
more like an
It's set up,
interlocal.
it's set up,
de
it's not,
facto.
it's not a 501(c) anyway. It's set up under some transportation deal which allows you to set up a corporation. It's not a typical 501(c) that somebody keeps referring to.
You
So,
got it.
You know,
That's pretty much
so
I think the de facto situation.
anyway, because when we were discussing the shelter, when we first started doing that, I had all the board members in here from every city, and got input from everybody, everything else. And Joe Dixon said right out there in the audience and said, Councilman, that's not necessary because y'all are building the shelter, y'all are paying the money for the shelter. I said, well, I still like to have everybody's input in this because
Right.
and that's the way it is, but it's not. This is why it's all paid. Everything goes through the city, through the finance department, and everything else, because now I agree, the deficit part, but the deal is that we say, okay, Santa Fe, this is how much you're going to pay this year. We send y'all, we let you know this, and you go back to and they put in the budget. Same thing with Clear Lake Shores. And rather, but everything is administered by the city, okay, of Dickinson. There's no, I don't see whether there's any convolution to this or anything else. I mean, this thing's been going on for, I don't know how many years now, but, I know it's at least 5 or 6. And I agree there's questions and, about the deficit and stuff like that. But if you look at those numbers and go back and look at those numbers, you'll see that one of the problems that happened was like during COVID, and I really hate bringing that up because everything does go back to that.
Oh, it does. Absolutely. Still,
yes.
we ain't out in the clear yet.
We were at that time when we were starting the shelter, building the shelter. Well, what we wanted to do at that time, which we didn't, we wanted to start building in the additional cost of the shelter because there's going to be, more lights, more water, more everything else. Okay. City of Santa Fe was one, and I think Clear Lake Shores was in the same thing. Look, well, why don't you wait till you're in the building before you start adding the additional cost? Well, the additional cost is going to be there. If we had done that, then that fund you're talking about would have been a little bit higher. And the fact that during COVID, you could forget trying to get money from anybody.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
as far as and this has gone on for still a while. Now, some of the costs that I just didn't want to get into all this, but some of the stuff you're costing about is the shelter has had a problem with getting the correct disinfectant over there to keep the odor down and some other things. The shelter was full to capacity prior to Ed getting here at times, and so that puts another strain on everything that you're talking about doing that. The fact that there was a whole lot of volunteers and sometimes part-time people, which were not dependable. Okay, and what you find is as you get into this, and it need to be run as a business more than somebody says, okay, I have a shelter now, okay, Joan, are you going to help me with this? Okay, and this has exceeded the cost of stuff. It happens, okay, but I'm saying is that everything that was done is like I said, because if tomorrow for some reason Santa Fe decided to give us 30 days notice that they don't want to be part of the shelter anymore, y'all are out. Okay, y'all just walk away. Same thing with British Shark, same with everybody else. We have those type of agreements with y'all. But so the brunt of the cost and all is still with the city of Dixon. So that's why the city of Dixon administers. I don't know if that makes sense to you or not, but that's the God's honest truth.
Yeah, no, it makes sense to me. Yeah. Makes sense to me. I don't think it's in the best interest of the citizens of Santa Fe for it to be ran that way.
Well, I mean, I know before, your predecessors and all, everything worked fine. And like I said, and you may be correct, I don't know. But
Because at the end of the day, our bylaws say that if the corporation dissolves, that all of our assets go back to the city of Dickinson.
well,
That was sure nice of you all to agree to that back in the day,
Yeah,
wasn't
Well,
it?
wasn't it?
the assets are the shelter, basically.
Mhm.
You know, and the money, like I said, the money that you're talking about is the 60-something% that Dickinson puts in, the 37% y'all put in, the percentage you put in, that Cleric Shores put in. Okay, that's the budget. That's where, and so it's all put in one fund, and then it's administered through us.
Mm.
And like I said, the additional, I'm telling you right now, and the additional cost that you're talking about, a lot of this budget overruns, just was one of these things where the funding just, I mean, you know, the corporations that were doing a lot of the heavy funding just aren't doing them.
Sure.
Or didn't do them this year. And this is where the big hit comes in, because I'm pretty sure they looked at last year saying, okay, we got $40,000 from this, they should probably be matching that this year. Well, if the money don't come in, then you got $40,000 deficit that you budgeted.
Mhm.
So, I mean, there's a lot of logical explanations. May not make sense to you, but
No, I understand. Yeah.
I mean, I think a workshop's a good idea. I mean, I think it's always good to look
whole-
at these things, and probably it hasn't been, the whole structure hasn't been looked at in a while, and it probably should be.
Well, this is one of the corporations that, it runs as a corporation, but like I said, we don't go out and recruit like people to be yearly members of it or something like that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Things like that. We haven't in the last few years done the fundraisers that they used to do. They used to have garage sale and everything else at the deal. We tried for years to set up a deal in Santa Fe to go over there and try to get some business over there that would sponsor this deal to come over there and provide vaccinations, chipping, things like that. We had deals with the pet stores to take cats to the pet stores, kittens to get them adopted. Well, now I believe if you take the kittens there, you have to make sure somebody goes out over there every day and cleans up after them and all this other stuff. Well, they're cleaning up after the other kittens anyway, so I don't know what difference it makes. So, I mean, things have just changed over the last 5 years. But the whole idea of this was to benefit the animals. Okay. I mean, trust me, there's a lot of people out there that are real strong on benefiting them animals.
Sure.
So do things get a little bit crazy? Yeah. But I mean, to be a real corporation, I mean, we would be the person that would say, okay, this is the person we're hiring as a director. We didn't. City of Dickinson hired a director. I was in on the interview, and so was Sean. But this is how this thing was set up.
And you think that that's okay? That the city of Dickinson is the one that hired the director of the
I
corporation?
have no problem with that.
Really? I do.
Well, we don't pay him. If we paid him, if the corporation paid him, if I was collecting money that paid the man, then yes, I would have a problem. But I'm not. I'm the city. It all comes from the cities that pay it. So,
What do you mean it all comes from the cities?
well, each city, like I said, each city budgets so much money each
Right.
year to run
Right.
the shelter.
Right.
He's a city employee, so
Right.
he would not be hired by the corporation.
So part of Santa Fe's tax dollars goes to his salary, yes or no?
I'm assuming it does.
So then why didn't Santa Fe have any representation on who we hired as the executive director?
That I can't answer you.
But you're saying you're okay with it.
I think it's because
The only thing
I think
only thing I can
the
tell you is
answer.
because he's a city employee.
He's not a city employee. He works for the corporation. Our bylaws
He
say
works
that
for the city of Dickinson.
he does not.
Okay.
Right. So I think
He doesn't.
I agree with what you're saying. I think again, you go back to like equity issues and what are the practices that have actually been carried out, whether that's what the bylaws say or not. But I mean, there is, all the employees are done that way. And I think that has to do with the interlocal, that we basically, the employee, we put in the money, then the city of Dickinson is the entity that handles the hiring and the firing of the employees. So again, it's this weird arrangement, right? So it's, I don't want to say it's like structurally flawed in a way, but it sort of is, right? That on the one hand, it has this corporation where what you're saying is true, right? That you should say, all right, we're going to get these directors here and they're going to meet on a hiring committee and do whatever. But the practice of it has been, and not just with Ed, it's not a recent thing, this is how they've all been done, is that, well, the city's handling all the personnel management, the hiring and firing. So the city does the hiring and firing. And that's why. Now, should it be that way or not? I'm not saying that, but that's how it's been done. And I think we need to, again, I go back to, I'm not sure what we're accomplishing at this point here in this venue. I think probably we should have a workshop about it and get to it.
Okay. Any more discussion on this? I guess we go on to item 7, briefing and discussion on IRS standing, which.
Yeah, I wanted to speak to this and bring this up. According to the bylaw or the bylaws, the purpose of this corporation one of the purposes. The corporation is incorporated as a nonprofit local government corporation for the purposes permitted by Section 501c3 of the IRS Code. And the board or its designee may accept any donation, gift, bequest. So it sounds like, according to the bylaws, the organization has all the rights and benefits of being a 501c3. When I approach foundations, the IRS puts out a pamphlet every year of all the 501c3s they recognize. We're not in it. And I understand that and to the best of my understanding, there have been grants given in the past, particularly after Harvey and that, the sort of pity grants, if you will, because a lot of foundations want to be seen giving to communities that are hard hit by natural disasters. But absent a natural disaster, these foundations aren't interested in helping if we're not even registered with the IRS. So I'm not sure what the bylaws are referring to when it says we have the rights and privileges of a 501c3.
I was just going to say, I don't think there's any like legal requirement that we be a 501c3, for instance. I mean, I don't think that's the issue. So it didn't really surprise me we're not registered, because I don't think we ever sought
the
that.
foundations are not wanting to give us money.
Right. So I understand that was an issue. I was told, I wasn't in city government here with Harvey, but that was one thing that would have helped the city. And this would probably apply to the corporation too, is that since we didn't have a nonprofit set up, you lose those incentives because you just have to give the money directly to the city. And that doesn't work as well. So
I got the grant from Petco, and the lady didn't have a problem with it. They're using the IN number the city has, which is their tax number. I got a truck donated to the city using the same thing from a pipeline company. Got other people who did. Everybody used the city's IN number as the identification for the IRS.
Right, yeah.
but I think, are you saying it would be more helpful if there was a nonprofit designation as well?
Right. I've got a volunteer contacting the.
They all told me that it would be, a lot easier that if there was an IRS number. I haven't, I have no idea, why it was easier or not. But like I said, they, because they were dealing with a city councilman, they, didn't have a problem with doing it that way.
Well, with respect to PetSmart, you said they got family in Santa Fe, so I think that probably helped.
Well, it also was after Harvey too, like I said. But
right, and that helped.
And I know what you're talking about.
But I'm in touch with her now, and they're pushing back that we're not a registered 501c3. And she's a friend of mine.
We have a founding document that was filed with the Secretary of State. We are under some type of tax
exempt. I don't know that it's a 501c3, but
it might
it is
not be a
tax
C3.
exempt.
It might be a C10 or a C7 or C4 or something. But again, it goes back to the difference between the corporation and the city. We shouldn't be using the city's tax information to get grants. The corporation ought to be independent and using their own stuff. We just need to get our house in order.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, all of it, like I said, it was set up that way by the city administrator at the time. City council voted for it. And, I found the same problem when I was talking to people about, what's your, because they want an IN number and IRS number. And I would go, we only have because I went to the city financial officer, so I just have to give an IN number. So, I lost a fundraiser for Tito's Vodka over that, because they didn't.
Yeah, I'm struggling. I'm fighting with them right now.
They did it, gave it to somebody else.
No, I'm fighting with them right now.
Is there, are you asking us, or just not, there's not an action item, but is this something that we just get with an attorney about to look at establishing this?
Well, as I said, I've got a professional grant writer who's volunteering with us, who's doing everything she can to try to sort it out and figure it out. But the question I have, Walter, and you may be the only person that knows the answer to this, is why the corporation wasn't just founded as a 501c3.
I cannot answer that. I know that our city administrator at that time was the one that put all this stuff together and found it under what was it, transportation code?
Yeah.
That you could do it under transportation code. That's all I know for sure.
So we wanted it to be a government agency.
I think so. A government agency that can, do, I don't, because I think Theo had the same problem. We looked it up and found out it was under transportation code. So, but no, there are problems to it. And I'm not, Even I'm not disagreeing with that, but I mean, it hadn't,
We've mentioned a number of times what we could be doing in the way of development, fundraising, and that if we had just a clean ability to demonstrate that we're a charitable organization and not a government entity. People will contribute to government entities, but not as many as who would donate to. Yeah, right. So
And that was making me think whenever you go and you contact these people, or like if you go to the Secretary of State and you're trying to request these records, a lot of times I know in my experience, whenever I was trying to get information on behalf of a nonprofit, they wanted a set of minutes that said that I was elected or appointed or whatever to their board. So that got me thinking, what is your position title actually?
Mine?
Yes.
Director.
Executive director.
Executive director. So where in the bylaws does it say that we have an executive director that's appointed? Because I was looking through it, I didn't see it.
Actually, it says the president serves as the executive director or as the manager of the facility.
So, yeah, I mean, this just goes back, and I don't want to beat a
There's
dead
never
horse.
has
This
been.
just goes back to the need for a workshop. But we have a set of bylaws here that's not signed. We don't have any minutes that it was ever adopted. We have an executive director that's not in the bylaws, that's actually paid by the city, but works for the corporation. It's,
But when you put it like that.
Do whatever
I
you
don't
want
know
to. No,
how
I mean,
else to put it.
yeah,
Okay.
be the word of the word of the meeting, workshop.
So future agenda item, I'm assuming would be a workshop of some sort, which, I can tell you right now, our preference, if the evening it's gonna need to be like a Thursday or something like that, because I work, I can't get back up here in time. It's up to y'all. I mean, I guess.
Well, I mean, we
have somebody else
can work
present.
that out
Yeah.
outside. Ed could
And if
coordinate
there's
that.
anything else that you'd like to see on a future agenda item,
Just very quickly, because I'm going to be coordinating, is Saturday not a good day for a
won't be
workshop?
for me. Yeah.
No. Any Saturday.
That would be legal. We
It
can't do
won't
it.
be
That
for
we
me
can't
till
do it.
October.
no, Saturdays aren't good for me.
So business days, Monday through.
The corporation used to meet on Thursdays.
I mean, is it one where if there was enough notice, people could take off like I don't know if it's better to do it like the day we did. I think the one we had last time, we did it in the day. I don't know if that's available if people have
That's not a problem
schedules
for
or
me.
if there's enough notice given or something. I know
Yeah.
Fred, I know your schedule a little more.
Also
I know your schedule is a little more dicey. Depends how much that help the astronauts need, but
Friday, Saturday nights and launches and landings. But Thursday nights should be fine.
but for the workshop, I would like to see us come up with items for discussion. In other words, we would discuss these particular things.
Oh, we'll have to post an agenda.
I know, but I'm just saying.
So we say workshop, I'm envisioning possibly a day-long meeting.
no, it just no.
no.
What he means is a workshop, as in like wouldn't have action items. It would just
Right.
be a workshop meeting, is what he means. Yeah, no. We're not asking you to like get off the drawing boards and let's write. No.
The reason I was saying is a specific item is, okay, you have certain questions that you want to have answered.
Mhm.
If you could provide those certain questions to Ed, we can make sure we get answers for you.
Mhm.
Okay, because we obviously don't know all those.
Sure.
And anybody else that has some specific questions that, would be benefit for if we have to talk to Harrison or if we have to talk to Theo or whoever, we can get this, that way we can get this thing. So we don't just sit around and, beat our gums for.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'll send you an email of the things that I'd like covered.
And like, even specific questions that you may have about those bylaws or whatever, that about the way they're written. There may be something to do with the corporation being formed the way it was. I don't know that for a fact.
Mhm.
So, but anyway, like I said, we rewrote them to take out, because Dickinson had, like you said, we had 4 votes at the time, and and which there's still, like I said, there's still one open position. Anyway, anybody else got any questions? Okay, anybody call for adjournment?
A second.
Move to adjourn, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? You sure you're not opposed, Brandon?
That's all right. Beat me up, Walter, but I'm gonna keep asking questions. That's what I do best. You betcha.
I want to try to, answer some of the stuff.